I guess what I don't understand is the difference between how you're describing the company's purpose and the mission, right? And I understand you come into an organization as a marketer, you need to make sure that you, your stakeholders, you're all aligned on this center ethos. But then there's
Yeah.
this notion of what's our purpose, what's our mission, and then what's our tactical operations.
Yeah.
Help me break down what the three are.
If our purpose is to reduce U.S. student debt, and the way that we reduce U.S. student debt is by involving employers in investing in talent to reduce that U.S. student debt, then employers have to benefit. We have to describe how employers benefit. We've got a purpose, then we've got a mission that includes how we achieve our purpose. And then on top of that, I want to give a shout out to these other elements, which I think are incredibly important as well. We've got a vision, which is how the world changes if we and other aligned organizations are successful in pursuing our mission. We've got our values, which are the road rules for how we behave as we go along pursuing our mission, trying to achieve our purpose. And then we've got positioning, which is incredibly important, which is for each of these stakeholders, we help them do or achieve something so that they can achieve some sort of other state, so they can become something else in an improved position. And then finally, brand promise, which is all of this distilled into a very short, pithy promise that you make to the marketplace, which becomes a decision tool. If you're Hallmark, caring shared is their brand promise. And if they can demonstrate that at every touch point in their brand experience, they become a trusted brand in greeting cards, which are supposed to do something or other, right? So like everybody knows Hallmark. Then tactically speaking, once you have your brand defined with your purpose-driven brand defined with purpose, mission, vision, values, positioning, and brand promise, then all your tactics are developed so that every experience across this map of brand experience touch points. So brand experience touch point being maybe you come into contact with me via email. Maybe you come into contact with me via my contract between you and I. Maybe you come into contact with me via the news about me vis-a-vis, how I interact with regulators. It's not just the marketing channels. It's any touch point that one of your stakeholders might come into contact with you. You tactically orient yourself so that you can deliver on that brand promise across all of those touch points, which sounds miserable and complex, and it is complex, but it's not miserable as long as you're telling the truth, as long as you're staying true to that brand promise, as long as you're telling the truth. This is something else that I always say, and this bears mentioning. We've all heard this. Tell the truth. It's easier. You got nothing else to remember. It's just the truth, right? So you got to define what that truth is. And that truth comes from a deep place where you're going to consistently deliver on it. And that's this intentional orientation towards achieving your purpose.
It seems like it's the way the world should be, right? We should all, as marketers, as honestly like corporate citizens, as world citizens, as people, have a sense of purpose and have our purpose drive our mission and have our mission dictate our values and have our values dictate our tactics and have our tactics reflect our purpose. And it sounds, as you lay it out, like a linear process of you go from one to the next. But it seems like almost every brand struggles with this definition of purpose and then the articulation of it to the marketplace, because we're all trying all sorts of different operational tactics. We're all trying to get visibility and awareness. And I think of the metrics like, as a marketer, what I think starts to drive the business results are things like reach and frequency and depth of message and conversion rates, as opposed to like, well, but did it come from the heart? So how do you rationalize the sort of practical nature of what most marketers are thinking about and doing on the daily basis with this notion that we should all have this central heartbeat in our head of what the organization is meant to be doing and what we actually do?
it comes back to being the one to trust, and being the one to trust and making promises and keeping promises, which can sound incredibly naive in the type of volatile, polarized environment that we live right now, right? With the elevation of greed to the status of a value among so many, unfortunately. But in my opinion, it could be way simpler. And I keep thinking about this idea of creating value and really doing it with a sense of excellence and staying in touch with the people that you create value for, and people and the groups of people that you create value for, and striving to do that better, and then allowing your tactics to be more like a bat signal that you shine out into the marketplace. Something else we haven't discussed is the idea of personal brand and how that lines up, right? So if you have an organizational brand that is intentional, well-defined, and can deliver on its promise, and the people working there don't see themselves reflected in that brand, don't understand like how they play their part in an authentic way, don't see their leadership really living the brand that they're supposed to be leading, that's a huge disconnect. And so something else as a consultant that I always recommended and worked to sell into an organization because I thought it was a good thing, a fundamentally good thing, was defining personal brands. So in the same way that you define an organizational brand, as a C-level executive within this company, what are you here to do? What gets you up in the morning about working in this company and running this company? And talking through it with them till they could get to the point of crystallizing how their sense of purpose aligned with this organizational purpose. My organization is here to do this, and in my life, I am here to do this. And personally, I am here to achieve this purpose, my personal purpose, by doing certain things, when that's my mission. And if I am successful in my mission as an individual, the world and others like me are successful who are aligned with my mission. The world will change in this way. You see, if you can go deep within an organization and facilitate the ability of the leadership to line up behind that organization's purpose in an authentic way, and I say authenticity because it's incredibly important. Authenticity is projecting the truth to you, and we'll come back to the same adage, which is telling the truth is easier because you don't have to remember anything, right? Authenticity winds up coming out. And if you're not telling the truth, that winds up coming out too. And you wind up with creating a trust issue for your brand because people don't trust the leadership of the brand, and then they start distrusting the brand. But if the leadership starts by determining how their own sense of purpose and mission lines up with the organization's sense of purpose and mission, and the organization is continually striving to deliver excellent value and fulfilling on their promise in a way that people trust because it's consistent, then the people working there start seeing how their sense of purpose lines up with that bat signal. And then all of a sudden you have an organization like REI, Opt Outside, where REI is a co-op, but it's a great example because they came up with Opt Outside. Seemed counterintuitive that on Black Friday, a brand that was a retail brand would say, don't come and shop here, get out. But it was consistent. It was trustworthy. It was truthful. It was delivering on their promise. It lined up with creating a level of excellence in the value of facilitating outdoor adventure. And you know what happened? Profits followed purpose, right? And that's typically how it works. So you could say it's super complex, but when you're behaving authentically and you don't have to lie because you don't have anything to remember, and just doing the best you can and in the views of your stakeholders, doing it with excellence, you're a purpose-driven brand.
I fundamentally believe in purpose-driven brands. And it's a really hard topic to wrap your head around as a marketer. We have to be very tactical, right? We have to be thinking about what is happening in the marketplace to try to figure out how to stand out. But fundamentally, the brands that have the longest staying power, that have the biggest impact on the world, are ones that have an understanding of who they are and of what they want to be as they continue to evolve. Jeff, I want to Thank you. And honestly, this is a different episode than what we normally have on the MarTech podcast, right? We're normally talking very tactically. We're normally talking about our operational tactics. This is a chance for us to step back and stop and say, hey, every once in a while, we need to have a check-in with ourselves to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And you've always been a great reference point for me to stop and think about my purpose, about the purpose of creating content, about the purpose of supporting the brands that we support. And I think that understanding of how to think about being a purpose-driven brand, it might sound fluffy to some people, and I don't have time for that. We're busy doing other stuff. Fundamentally, this is the most important thing that you can do, is understand why you and your organization are there. Why do you exist? And the more that you can get behind that mission, the better off and the more profitable you'll be in the long run.